Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 12th of December of 2023. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And the most important updates are coming from Washington, from the capital of United States of America. Today Zelensky visited this city and he had already meetings with a lot of important people. He had a conversation and negotiations with the Minister of Defense of United States of America, Lloyd Austin. Also, Zelensky visited the United States Senate and he was asking for money. And at least when talking about the current situation, the official position either of United States of America or Ukrainian authorities is that the main purpose of Zelensky was to come to Washington to talk with Republicans, with Democrats, and to ask them for more money for 2023 and for 2024. But that was official position, and this is official position, but I changed my mind somewhere at noon time, a little bit later of today, of the 12th of December, because we got during the day a lot of very interesting updates from Ukraine. So let's start discussing them, and then we're going to talk about Zelensky once again, and I will tell you the real reasons why Zelensky visited the United States of America today. During the day, the Russians made one of the most powerful hacker attacks on Ukrainian infrastructure. One of the results of a Russian hacker attack on mobile operators was 404. So that means the notification system was completely down. And the Russians, not just notification system, but alarm notification system, missile strike notification system. So what was that? The beginning, the preparation before the Russian massive missile strike? Maybe. Another important thing is that the Russians managed to shut down the bank system of Ukraine. The Russians managed to shut down the global network system. They managed to shut down Kyivstar, one of the leading mobile operators, and so on. So basically, the entire, let's say, electronic infrastructure of Ukraine was shut down. Not this entire, but most important, most powerful, let's say, from different perspective, electronic infrastructure was shut down by the Russian hacker attack. Once again, missile alarm notification system was shut down. The mobile operator, one of the biggest, was shut down. The bank system was shut down. So now you may ask, so what is the connection between this hacker attack and Zelensky? I must say that today there was the biggest hacker attack, obviously not just in Ukraine but in the world. And obviously, as I understand and according to my experience, the Western countries knew that the Russians were planning to do something. Obviously, they had some titles of the operation, let's say big attack, maybe secret operation, or I don't know, to attack to collapse of Ukraine or whatever, or Maidan 3. Who knows? But obviously the Western countries knew about the preparation of that hacker attack, but they didn't know what exactly the Russians were planning to do. To start massive missile strike, or to make Maidan 3 the strike on the streets, or maybe to open the third or second front line. So that's why the United States of America took a decision to be on the safe side, and they took a decision to evacuate Zelensky from Ukraine and to take him right exactly to Washington, the only place where Zelensky can, the official and the legal president, the only legal president of Ukraine, can feel himself safe. There is no other place where Zelensky can feel himself safe. So this is the reason, because later we got update that Zelensky that Ukrainians will receive some money in the next year and even this year. There are going to be 2 military aids for around $1 billion, but there is nothing new. It's just the small amount of the pocket that was already adapted for Ukrainians, for Ukraine. Nothing more. So once again, Zelensky visited the United States of America not to break the situation, to ask money or something like this. The United States of America basically took a decision to hide him during the Russian special operation, hacker attack, or whatever, because this is not the end. Obviously, those things that we discussed, the shutdown of notification system, is the first step before the Russians launched massive missile strike all over the entire Ukraine. And now we are moving to the situation on the ground, and first we're going to talk about Kherson direction. The Russians reported that as a result of clashes on this area, the Ukrainians lost another 35 soldiers, 2 armored vehicles and 3 artillery systems. As you might see, the Russians still haven't managed to destroy the foothold, no matter that, regardless that the situation is fit Russian requirements, but as I understand, currently they have a plan to destroy this foothold before the president elections. And every single day we start receiving more and more updates of Russian attempts to attack the Ukrainians on the ground, but most of those attacks were repelled by the Ukrainians, and the Russians did have some losses in their armored vehicles and infantry. So the Russians also, they analyzed the situation. The Russians were using FABs against the Kreminna area. The Russians were attacking this territory with self-navigated missiles, Lmur. The Russians made few attempts to attack this village on the ground, and we see that nothing helps. So that's why the Russians are step by step, but they're changing their focus, and currently the main and the most important focus of the Russian forces is boats along Dnipro River and Kazachela-Gersko-Konko River. Two river roads that Ukrainians use to supply and support their forces on the Russian bank of the river, because the Russians understand no matter regardless the number of FABs they used in this territory, the Ukrainians managed to save their presence. Regardless the number of missiles they used, the Ukrainians managed to save their presence in this area, and the only possible solution is to destroy the Ukrainian boats, like to cut supply, to cut basic the Ukrainians supporting basic needs like water and munition, and to force the Ukrainians either to step back or whatever. So that's why the Russians during the previous days published significant number of Lancet strikes, FPV drone strikes against the Ukrainian artillery systems and the boats in the river. Furthermore, the Russians published a very interesting video from Tyaginka area. For example, on this footage we can see the Russian FPV drone who was flying above the Ukrainian territory without any problems, as you can see, without any electronic warfare jam or something like this. The Russians discovered the Ukrainian trucks, buses that brought boats to the shore, to the bank of Dnipro River, and the Russians destroyed those trucks. So they try, the main focus and solution how to destroy the Ukrainian foothold in this area is in destroying of Ukrainian boats and vehicles that the Ukrainians use to bring boats to the bank of the river. Now we are moving further to Zaporizhzhia area. We also have some updates from this territory. According to information we have, as a result of clashes, artillery duels on this territory, the Ukrainians lost 70 soldiers on 33 armored vehicles. As you can see, the level of losses is not like as usually. For example, yesterday the Ukrainians lost 45, the day before yesterday 50, and on the 9th of December 35. So it's a very big level of losses in comparison with the previous days. Maybe there were some clashes, maybe there were some activity in this area, maybe we're gonna receive more updates tomorrow, but obviously something happened during the previous 24 hours, and maybe the Russians launched a series of counterattacks, and the results of those counterattacks we're gonna receive later. Now we are moving further to the South Donetsk direction. According to information we have, as a result of clashes on this direction, the Ukrainians lost 70 soldiers, 3 armored vehicles and 3 artillery systems. After a very short operational pause in the vicinity of Staromayorsk, Rovnopolye in this square, the Russians activated their actions and start attacking the main supply road that lays between Rovnopolye and Staromayorsk. On this video we can see how the Ukrainians, after another artillery fire, were trying to evacuate wounded soldiers, but the Russians managed to discover and they bombed this territory with artillery heavily, and basically the entire evacuation team was destroyed. So that means that the Russians do have some certain plans in direction of the road, and obviously those bombardments were a part of artillery preparation, and I believe that we need to expect the next some ground operation in this direction within the next 48 hours. So the Russians, if they are able to take control over these two powerful and big strongholds, obviously they may encircle Staromayorskaya, at least half encircle the city or the village or what's left from this territory. We haven't received anything from Novomikhailivka, but probably soon we're gonna get some. Now we're moving to Marinka, and we have a lot of very interesting geolocations from this south direction, Donetsk direction. First, the most important, that the Russians managed to improve their positions in direction of the village or the stronghold by the name of Pobeda. So the Russians are moving here and trying to spread and develop their foothold on the southwestern part of Marinka. Furthermore, from this territory we got the video of some Ukrainian soldiers. They didn't provide us the information the brigade they belong to, but according to this video, these Ukrainians have been fighting for Marinka for since the beginning of the special military operation for another 18 months, and they were talking about very difficult situation, and they were not asking, they were requiring, but maybe even demanding Zaluzhny and Zelensky to rotate them and to replace them with the fresh forces. But they made another request, another demand, that they accept only one replacement if Zelensky and Zaluzhny will replace them with, I don't know how to call this in English, with golden boys and golden girls of Ukraine. I'm talking about the daughters and sons of authorities, of let's say very powerful and rich people, those people who have fun in Europe, in nightclubs and so on. And this is the only guys, and this is the only soldiers they will allow them to replace. But if Zelensky and Zaluzhny is not going to replace them, they will leave their positions because they refuse to follow the orders. Furthermore, we got some geolocations from the northern part of Marinka from these farms. We are using this video just for geolocation purposes, to understand, to determine, and to discover, to realize the combat line in this area. On this video we can see how the Ukrainians, the forces of 79th Brigade, were bombing the Russian positions on this area, which confirms the Russian presence and the Russian control over this territory. So this is the only purpose of this. We have like the geolocation of Russian control over this territory. That's it. Now we are moving to Avdiivka, and the most significant and important updates are coming from this territory. To be more precise, from the southern part of Avdiivka itself, of the village, of a residential area. According to many different sources, many different either the Russian support, neutral, and pro-Ukrainian sources, the Russians managed to penetrate the Ukrainian defense belt and to establish control over the first buildings in Avdiivka itself, along Yasinovata line or street and along Kirova Street. So according to some Russian and pro-Ukrainian Western sources, the Russians managed to establish control over this territory. So this is obviously significant results of Russian offensive operation, yet we haven't received even a single geolocated confirmation of that progress. But anyway, I believe that we're going to receive one today, or maybe tomorrow we're going to receive some geolocations. Obviously this is a disaster for the Ukrainians, and mainly this is the disaster for the Ukrainians that have their positions in Tsarskaya Okhota fortification, because if the Russians are able to continue advancing further, they may try to encircle the Ukrainian positions along Lisova Street and basically to force the Ukrainians to step back from the one of the most powerful and fortified area in direction of Sportivnaya Street, like to force the Ukrainians to do this. And it will open the gates for the Russians from the south to move significant number of forces, armored vehicles and tanks to the southern part of Avdiivka, and basically to collapse the entire front line, which will also allow the Russians to encircle and to establish control over another one of the biggest and one of the most important powerful strongholds of Ukrainian army in this area, and I'm talking about ex-air defense base. So these two areas currently is under risks, and the Russians may capture them even by the end of this week, or at least to force the Ukrainians to step back further in direction of 9th quarter of the village, or like Khimik. The update from the northern part we have already discussed, like that the Russians managed to cross the railways with armored vehicles, with heavy armored vehicles like tanks, and this is the beginning of the process of concentration and accumulation of critical mass with armored vehicles on the Ukrainian side of the railways, which can lead to further penetration and complete collapse of the Ukrainian defense belt on the line between Novobakhmutovka, Berdichi, Semyonovka. Now the time works in Russian favor if they can like move more and more tanks on this side of the railways. Now we are moving to Horlivka direction, and we got some update from the Ukrainian side. On this video we can see how the Ukrainians managed to capture the Russian soldiers, how the Ukrainians managed to capture the hill, and this is like the evidence and confirmation that Ukrainians established complete control over the Terikon, the landfields on the Horlivka. So we will not change the color of map of like in the gray zone. This is like obvious control by the Ukrainian forces, and yet the Russians haven't managed to force them to step back from this territory. When talking about Bakhmut, we got significant results of work of ex-Wagner forces Concord and Akhmat special unit. If you remember, during the previous days we were talking a lot that the Russians managed to establish control over this residential area, but I refused to change the map because we didn't have any geolocated confirmations of Russian progress. Since the beginning of December we got a lot of updates of FPV drone strikes against the Ukrainians. We had lots of updates of bombardments and so on, but we haven't received even a single geolocation of operation on the ground. And today on the 12th of December we got the first one. On this video we can see the process of storm. Once again, this village was captured by Wagner forces, ex-Wagner forces, and by special unit Akhmat, because Wagner currently some Wagner forces is a National Guard under responsibility of National Guard, some of them under Akhmat special unit. There is no like separate unit like Wagner anymore. Like ex-Wagner fighters were split by different armies in Russian Federation. In this video we see the storm process. So from now on this area will be updated, and according to information we have, the Russians managed to establish full control, complete control over this territory, and to dig in deeper inside of the Ukrainian defense belt. Currently the main clashes are taking place in the central part of this residential area, and obviously we can start counting days before this territory falls, because these residential days of this residential area are numbered. The Russians moved their focus further to the western part of this residential area, and we can see significant number of FPV drone bombardments of this territory. So the Russians are moving further. Furthermore, I'll remind you that just yesterday we got some updates that as a result of offensive operation, the Russians managed to establish control over this territory as well. But as you can see, I still haven't changed the map because we need more evidence of that, like some geolocations, but we will add this polygon to the map just for understanding. We see that the Russians are getting closer and closer to Ivanovsk, and there are very high chances that the battle for the city is going to start very soon. We haven't received any reports from Bogdanovka, just some messages in Telegram channels that once again the Russians entered the northeastern part of the village, but we have already discussed the risks and the situation in this village due to the Ukrainian fortification that located on the hill on the northwestern part of this territory. So for now I don't trust any updates about Russian progress in Bogdanovka. Without taking control over the hill, there are very low chances that the Russians can make a flawless victory in Bogdanovka. They will have to pay a significant price for this village. Now we are moving to Soledar direction. Once again, we will update this map, this territory. The Russians managed to establish control over the railways. At least we have some confirmed geolocations of that progress, and we can already can update and adjust the map right now so that the Russians managed to establish control. We have some proofs of that, and according to these geolocations, yes, we can confirm that Ukrainians do have some progress in Veselaya, and even from this configuration we see that the Veselaya for 60% is encircled, and that the main supply roads that goes to this area is under complete Russian fire control. And yes, this is not like a cauldron, but obviously this is operational encirclement of those Ukrainian forces that were abandoned or left in this village. Obviously the days of Veselaya are also numbered. Now we're moving to Liman direction. According to information we have, the Ukrainians lost 185 soldiers and 3 armored vehicles. We have already discussed the Russian progress in Kreminna, that they managed to penetrate the Ukrainian defense belt, and also they managed to half encircle some Ukrainian positions inside of the forest or in the gray zone, which we don't have any like updates of its status. Anyway, the Ukrainians either need to counterattack the Russians or to step back, otherwise they will be encircled by the Russians. or something like this. But those were not the only updates from this territory. The Ukrainian sources published the video. We will not watch this video due to the significant number of killed Russian forces in this forest, but according to this video that was provided by the Ukrainians managed to capture a few more strongholds in Dnipro direction. So according to this video, that was something like Ukrainian progress in this territory. Another important thing, that if we increase the number of updates since the beginning of December, on the 3rd of December we got another video from the Ukrainian side how they were storming the Russian positions on the west of Dnipro. During that attack, the Ukrainians were using 2 armored vehicles and 1 personal carrier. They managed to land their infantry and basically to capture a few territories and few strongholds and so on. Anyway, regarding the situation in Kreminna, some Russian progress in Tarskoye salient, the Ukrainians do have some progress on the western part of Dnipro, and because of that fact that we have some geolocations from this territory, before the next video we will update the map and we will show this territory as the territory under Ukrainian control. This is Ukrainian progress. We have 2 geolocations from this territory. Now, when talking about Kupyansk direction, we have also few updates from this territory. According to the Ministry of Defense, the Ukrainians during the previous 24 hours lost 105 soldiers and 2 armored vehicles. The most important updates are coming from Sinkovka and from Horlivka. On this video, we can see how the Russians using FPV drones were bombing the Ukrainian positions on the edge of the city, of the village, which confirms that there are still no stable Russian foothold inside of the village, and that Ukrainians still located on the outskirts of the village, and that's it. So the Ukrainians still control Sinkovka, maybe for 95% or something like this, but anyway, most of the village is under Ukrainian control. When talking about Horlivka, the Ukrainians during the previous day tried to implement or tried to attack or counterattack the Russian positions along this tree line. They concentrated significant number of forces. They were planning to make this attack during the night period of time, but the Russians managed to discover the Ukrainians by let's say somewhere in the morning when the sun rise. And on this video, for example, we can see how the Russians were bombing the Ukrainian concentration force along the tree line with FPV drones. When the Ukrainians realized that their positions were discovered, they took a decision to withdraw and to run away. As you can see, the entire platoon, not even platoon, maybe even few platoons, left their positions and basically ran away from that tree line. And basically that's like a fantastic situation, and that tree line obviously later was captured and cleared by the Russians. Maybe that was like a strike in Ukraine army. I can't tell you for sure. We saw what you saw, few FPV drone strikes, and 2 platoons took a decision to leave this position. A very fantastic video. So this situation may mean a partial collapse of this front line or something like this. And we will finish this video with diary of the day 26. This day started with 172 losses from the Ukrainian side of wounded and killed, and this day 26 day ended with 177 killed and wounded soldiers. So basically the Ukrainians during the day, just as a result of work of 1 FPV drone operator, lost another 5 soldiers. So this is the future. This is the future and the next generation of war in this year. Final video. The Russians are sending more and more tanks in direction of Ukraine. Another batch of Russian tanks, T-72, T-64, is heading to the territory of special military operation. And when talking about the Ukrainians, they have the Senate have just approved another 500 millions, which will be enough maybe for bullets for rifles. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.